Good evening. Welcome to the December 16th, 2015 meeting of the Gaithersburg Historic District Commission. We're going to go a little bit out of the normal order this evening. We are a little bit short of a quorum. We hope the necessary party is on the way. So in the interim, before we take anything that's on the agenda, we will discuss the elements of the master plan toward the end of it.
Okay, so at the past two meetings, we went over the objectives and action items from the existing master plan, which was passed in 2006. And the HDC provided recommendations. And so for this meeting, I thought we would look at a basic outline of the entire master plan. So this is the memo I sent out to all of you. What we're trying to do is integrate the Maryland 12 planning visions. I don't know if you were able to take a look at those, but we're trying to integrate as many of those as possible into the master plan. So I will open up these are the 12 planning visions. As you see, I counted 7 of them that relate to our master plan. Quality of life and sustainability, obviously, is one. Public participation, number 2. Community design, number 4. Number 7, housing. Number 8, economic development. And number 10, resource conservation, and then 11, stewardship. A few of them, as you can tell, overlap quite a bit, like quality of life and sustainability, and resource conservation and stewardship are all kind of interrelated. So those are the 12 visions, and here is the outline draft I prepared. And as you can see, we're going to start with an introduction and then move into the 7 planning vision items that relate, and there's some subheadings there. For quality of your life and sustainability, we have social interaction and neighborhood identity, public participation, civic involvement. For community design, we have walkable neighborhoods, community character, and proximity to transit. Housing, we have desirable neighborhoods, mix of housing types, sizes, and prices. For economic development, we have improves property values, tax credit incentives, job creation, and heritage tourism. For resource conservation, we have scenic landscapes and streetscapes. And for stewardship, we have embodied energy, construction quality, and efficient land use. And after that, we move to the role of the preservation plan and how it's going to be used going forward. How it relates to other city plans and other rules and regulations plans for the state as well. We have an overview of our preservation program, including the administrative component. HDC falls underneath that, as well as my role here. And we have the identification component, where we survey historic resources in the city. The management component, how are these resources overseen with the preservation ordinance and design guidelines. Number 4, incentives and benefits component. The county tax credit, the state tax credit, the federal tax credit, and grant opportunities that are open to historic property owners. Moving to Roman numeral number 2, the historic resources in Gaithersburg. This is similar to what's in the existing document. We have the historic development of Gaithersburg. The early history, the B&O Railroad, and the post-war development. I thought it could be broken down in those 3 areas. I'm certainly open to any kind of input you all would have on that. And then we're going to get into the city's designated resources, the individually designated historic districts, courtesy review areas, and other notable historic resources that may not be designated, for example, City Hall. And then number 3, Roman numeral 3 will look familiar. Those are the objectives. So if anyone has any kind of input about rearranging or adding or subtracting anything, we're certainly open to it.
I do have a question. What does embodied energy mean?
That means when you have a building constructed, that a lot of energy went into its construction. To just tear it down is to lose all that energy that went into its construction. Commissioner Ventola, as an architect, I don't know if that would be your definition as well.
Well, I
Yeah, we
understand.
don't use that term.
I understand it in the sense of what I have learned in our learning opportunities as far as the materials ending up in landfills and creating a bigger carbon footprint, and that it's much more green to retain a property and
Absolutely.
then come up with reuse ideas. So that makes sense to me. I just didn't understand that terminology. Okay.
You want me to add to that?
Sure, go ahead.
Basically, we've used it when I was on the County Historic Preservation Commission quite a bit as an excuse or an explanation as to why it was better not to replace windows, why it was better. Because if you looked at the total energy cycle of the cost of manufacturing the windows and manufacturing what was there, it actually gives you very strong reasons of preservation that, hey, listen, the energy that it took to either build this unit or to build the window or to build whatever it is far greater than the energy savings or the incremental energy savings going forward.
Yes, that and the fact
Just
that...
so we have a complete record, if you
Oh,
just
yeah, please say your
I'm sorry.
give your name. And
My name is Jeff
position
Fuller,
on-
DNC Architects, 201 East Diamond.
Thank you.
Yes, and
Thank
the
you, sir.
other information I know about that is that usually the vinyl windows usually last about 20 years, so they also, again, end up in the landfill, which is, again, a larger footprint.
So it's really part of looking at life cycle and cost from cradle to grave. If you really look at the energy use, so there's a lot of embodied energy. So it actually is something that both in architecture and then pulling it into historic preservation is very useful.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Do we have any other comments, questions?
I tried to drag that out as long as I could.
It is very much in depth. I think you did a great job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It is.
With regard to the the preceding outline of the 12, number 3 is growth.
Mhm.
Would you characterize the state of affairs in Gaithersburg at this time as allowing significant growth, or are we at the point of basically looking at infill measures?
I think the city's always looking for to grow as much as possible. A combination of the both, I would say. But we didn't feel that growth fit here. I can put up again the definition from the state for growth, and it's number 3. So I didn't think that particularly fit in with preservation.
Right. But design is a consideration.
Absolutely, yeah. These neighborhoods, especially the historic districts, fits that definition: compact, mixed-use, walkable design, located near transit routes.
Well, the question I have is when we're talking about incentives, can we go there? Are you done, John, with whatever?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
And it said tax credits from the state and from the county.
Mhm.
And then it says grants. At this time, does the city of Gaithersburg itself have any incentives?
The city itself does not, no. But there are grant opportunities for historic homeowners, whether it's at the state or national level for designated properties.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, we're still waiting for our missing member. So, if I could have your indulgence for, let's say, 5 minutes, and perhaps let's go off the record.
Yeah, I think so. I'll try to give them a phone call again and see if
Well, I
I
don't know
can.
about, I think we've started unless you
do want to close, I think, in terms of because we are televised, actually. So I think it might be kind of awkward to close. I don't know if it might help just to do any updates of anything else that's going
Well,
on as we wait.
well,
Can we change this to a courtesy review?
I would defer to our legal counsel. We do need to review this.
Yeah,
At
this
some
looks like
point.
one that is not courtesy. It's
Right.
one that we have to
Yes.
we have to issue. So that's a good thought. That's a good thought. But
What, a preliminary review?
and you did
Or,
indicate
yes,
that
something, I don't know the wording, but
Right.
yes.
I certainly could do that. Is you did indicate that you have a fourth member?
We did. Phil did express that he would be able to attend.
No, I'm saying you had
Oh.
talked to somebody a moment ago.
No, I did not get
Oh.
a hold of him, no.
Okay. Okay. Do we have anybody's cell phone where we could?
I did call him and texted him, but haven't received a response.
Nothing.
Mm-mm.
And Brother Kurt says he was in Costa Rica, is that correct?
Yes, and Commissioner Wyke, she had her third child a couple of weeks ago,
Mm.
so that explains her
Sure.
absence.
Well, and the question there would be the likelihood of her to be able to make it tonight. So,
Right, yes, it's-
So
I
no.
don't think so.
So Phil said he would.
right.
So we don't know about traffic. And
Commissioner Feinstein had a prior engagement, so he was
Okay.
unable to attend.
so you left a message with.
Commissioner Wessel, yes.
Typically, this time of year is difficult. We rarely have a December meeting, to be honest.
Right.
But the eventuality was discussed the
Sure.
last time.
Right.
And you did get a commitment.
I did,
from Phil,
yes.
so-
Yeah. Now, I thought originally our guidelines were easier on us when it came to a quorum, but that changed because of codes or laws or rules, is that what?
I think just numbers.
Well,
I think just
I thought we
numbers
used
because
to
you've
have
got to have at
wording.
least a majority to approve something. Even if, I mean, certainly you could do courtesy review. I guess you could do preliminary review.
yeah, but we have an applicant here who deserves far better.
Oh, certainly. You could do that, and the tape recording could be made available, I mean, so that a fourth or fifth commission member could review it and then engage in making a final decision at your next meeting, which wouldn't necessarily require the applicants to all be here because their presentation would be part of the record. It's a public record anyway, but certainly we would have, our rules would allow a fourth commissioner to engage in a final vote once they review the record and state that, they'd have to state that on the record at the next meeting in January.
Then my next question would we be allowed to leave the record open so that once the other commissioners viewed the material, they could ask questions?
Well, actually, until, I mean, they're asking questions isn't necessarily, I mean, that's part of the recording of the event. The record is actually any new evidence that comes in.
Okay.
But unless you state otherwise, your record stays open until your final decision anyway.
I would
You
think
can
that would
close
have
it
to-
that's
formally at a different time, that's up to you. But if you don't, technically it does. It's
Well,
just
if we
that,
were to go that route, Frank, I think you would absolutely positively have to allow the applicant to follow up at the next time in case something did
Sure.
arise.
sure. of
They
course.
certainly deserve to have the last word on
I
it.
think he's saying that they
Sure.
don't have to if they don't want to.
Yeah, if they don't want to,
Well,
certainly.
and they
not.
wouldn't have to give the same presentation. It may be a matter of having whoever here that they feel could answer any questions. It may be even be helpful to have a sense of, they'll hear from you if there's a fourth and fifth, what questions may they have based on what they would review, because they would have to review the tape, the recording of the meeting, and the presentation and hear the recommendations and all that prior to the next meeting. So hopefully if they had questions, that could be clear, and perhaps that could help gauge who needs to be here from the applicant to answer any questions, present any additional information. So, I mean, it's a bit awkward, but it is workable.
Well, let's see. Gentlemen, I apologize for the state of affairs of the evening. I'm sorry, and it certainly isn't your fault. You've heard the Assistant City Attorney outline a method of proceeding tonight and getting done what we can get done. Is, if you want to take a minute or two to discuss the ultimate question, do we want to proceed? Is that acceptable to you?
And if in the meantime the fourth commissioner does appear, we could certainly take some steps to make sure they're aware, and with your concurrence, then might be able to go ahead and move into a final decision. I don't know whether there's just a holdup on the road, or
I mean, in talking
You're all
with,
here, so.
in talking with my client, I think what we'd prefer is to have the official hearing be one concise hearing. So that what we prefer to do, if we're doing anything tonight, let's turn this into a preliminary. And then, as you said, if the commissioner gets here, then we can sort of hopefully expeditiously go back through what we had been through and then try to get it wrapped up. Because we are trying to work, we're working under a fairly tight time constraint for the business that they really would like to get in and opened. But as I said, I just think to end up with a hearing that starts and ends, that it puts us into sort of a unique category. I would just assume it's a fairly simple project and a fairly simple set of things that we're trying to do. I would just assume keep it as one presentation. So I think I'd prefer to make this just be an unofficial, do you call it a preliminary review?
Yes, preliminary review.
Preliminary
We
review.
could do that if that's the way we wish to proceed. That's.
Sure. Absolutely.
I'm just, again, sorry that this is the way things are. Well, let's start then at least and go through some formalities. First, taking the role of the folks who are here for the record. Frank, let's start with you.
Frank Johnson, Assistant City Attorney.
Mary Jo LaFrance.
John Roddy.
Dean Ventola.
Chris Berger.
And we'll put off the minutes until the next meeting, and I'll give just the barest preliminary statement that this commission is empowered to meet and act under the Article 12 of the City Code of Gaithersburg. The technical qualifications of the staff of the commission and the members of the commission are on file with the City of Gaithersburg and are available on request to any applicant, and are hereby made part of it, the legal record of each and every application heard today and any day. Each application heard is considered on its own merits and not to be considered as establishing a precedent for any other application. So let us have a preliminary discussion of HIST 7196-2015, 124 East Diamond Avenue.
The subject property at 124 East Diamond Avenue is located at the northwest corner of East Diamond and Park Avenues within the Old Town District. The Italian Renaissance style building is 2 stories tall and measures 4,132 square feet. The building was constructed circa 1903 and is known as the Exchange Building because the Hogan family lived inside and operated the city's telephone exchange inside the building from 1903 to 1937. Former Gaithersburg Mayor William McBain was a later owner of the property. The Exchange Building has been used as offices over the past few decades. The city designated the building as a historic resource in 1987 for its significance to architecture, commerce, and communications. A 2-story, 2,400 square foot addition was built on the north side circa 1987. The applicant seeks to meet ADA requirements as it converts the building into a funeral home. As an individually designated building, a historic area work permit is required under Section 24-227A of the City Code. The project includes the following work items. Number 1, replacement of the ramp on the north elevation with stairs. Number 2, reconfiguration of the parking lot. Number 3, replacement of the stairs on the west elevation with a ramp. And number 4, enclosure of the second-story doorway on the west elevation. Number 5, widening of the first-floor doorway on the west elevation. Number 6, replacement of the sign on the south elevation. And number 7, the addition of metal railing on the south elevation. I'd like to introduce Jeff Fuller of GNC Architects, as well as Jamie Thibodeau and Brian Cable with Thibodeau Mortuary Services. And if you give me just a moment, I will put your presentation on your... Okay, you're ready to go.
Before you continue, did we check for conflicts of interest yet?
No, we did not. But since we're not taking a vote of any sort this
Well,
evening-
no, but
all
I
right,
was
well,
thinking-
all right,
But
that's-
still, for the record,
I think it does
Good
matter.
idea. All right, does anyone here have a conflict or anything
No, I
they
do
wish to
not.
declare? I do not either. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dean.
When you're ready.
Thank you. I guess I want to start by thanking Chris for working with us over the last few months, and I want to thank the commissioners that are here for attending on sort of an unusual hearing before the holidays. As Chris indicated, my name is Jeff Fuller. I'm managing principal DNC Architects. We're located at 201 East Diamond. Quite frankly, I personally have a very long history of work within the city of Gaithersburg, from coming out to NIST as it was being built. My dad was showing me the reactors and the linear accelerators he got to play with, and competing at the Gaithersburg Fair, riding horses, and going to Chris's and Roy's and retail establishments. And quite as an office, we've designed probably 1.2 million square feet of space in Gaithersburg, not all of which got built. But we've a long history in Gaithersburg, and so it's a place we've enjoyed being. And over the last few years since we moved here, we've been very happy to be in Gaithersburg. I want to just briefly ask Jamie to give a quick overview of his business, Thibodeau Mortuary Services, which is really their moving is really the reason for the historic work area permit. Jamie?
Jamie Thibodeau, and been a funeral director since 1990, and I'm the first in my family. So worked with a lot of other funeral homes, worked with the poor and the very wealthy, but generally I developed this business so that we could offer a fair price with really quality service. And we've been over at 7 Park Avenue for the last 6 years, and we've outgrown it and saw an opportunity, so here we are. We'd like to be a permanent fixture here in Gaithersburg.
Thank you.
If I may interrupt for a second, our 4th member, he's on his way. I called him, I got a hold of him. He expressed his sorry that he's not here, so he lives close. He should be here within 5 minutes. So
Great.
Well, actually,
Good news.
we want to pause until that time. That
I
might
think
be-
that would probably be most prudent, so you're not repeating more than the introductory
Okay.
statements. Again, I apologize. Generally, we do operate a little bit more efficiently than this.
Well,
Well, we have to work within a quorum, and it happens, so we appreciate your patience. And-
Sure.
I mean,
But we should have the 4th here, and we'll be able to move forward then. That'll also avoid him having to review tapes or anything else, so
That's
that'll be
best.
helpful. And thanks, Chris, for
yeah, you're welcome.
trying again.
He seemed very surprised when I called him.
Was this, so this was not necessarily on our list, this was somebody who
Oh,
had said...
no. Phil was planning to come, yeah. But he, it slipped his mind because we weren't scheduled to have a December meeting.
Okay.
And he has young twins, so he's very occupied as well.
Well, we
Okay.
do appreciate the meeting very much.
Well, it's unseasonably nice outside, too.
for December, this is amazing weather.
Yeah.
We were remarking, though, that awful lot of traffic having to get over from our offices over here this evening. I think I had to take half a step one time because a car was there, and it's like, it's tough to have to come all the way. On this kind of bad weather night, it's really a tough situation.
How long has DNC been in downtown Gaithersburg? At that building, it's relatively new.
We've only been there for 2 years.
Okay.
We had were on Picard Drive in Rockville for 40 years.
Oh, well.
And our landlord paid us a bunch of money to get out because the other tenant in the building wanted to expand and be the only tenant in the building, and so we saw that as a foreclosure. I was very disappointed, though, that taking over Chris's, because Chris's was just such a landmark to me. It's a place I've been to for so many years.
Oh, sure.
Could use some front porch. It has wood railings on the porch part, but coming down the steps are part of the iron, just very typical.
Chris, do you want to talk a little bit about the opportunity that you shared with us by email to waste some time?
Yeah, Chair Kurtz forwarded that along to me. He, as you know, is on the board of the MAHDC. And Assistant City Attorney Johnson, I don't think I included you with that, but there's going to be a lecture in Annapolis at the end of January about sea level rise in historic coastal communities, which may not necessarily be relevant to Gaithersburg, but certainly to this area. So it should be an interesting topic.
Let the record reflect, Commissioner Wessel has arrived.
Sorry, everybody. Had my hands full of babies and lost track of the clock.
Good evening.
Good evening. For the record, Phil, do you have any conflicts with HIST 7196-21015?
No, I do not.
All right. If you wouldn't mind, Mr. Fuller, just repeating briefly your introductory
Sure, I'll cut
statement.
it shorter this time because it didn't need to go into the full history last time. Again, want to thank Chris for working with us over the last couple of months, and want to thank all the commissioners for coming out on this off-scheduled hearing. We appreciate the opportunity. My name is Jeff Fuller, Managing Principal, DNC Architects. We're located at 201 East Diamond. We've been there for about the last 2 years. We've been in business for about 55 years total. We'd like to ask Jamie Thibodeau, the operator and owner of Thibodeau Mortuary Services, to give a brief overview of his business.
In general, I'm Jamie Thibodeau. We're a full-service funeral home that works with virtually everyone, interfaith, and we came to Gaithersburg at 7 Park Avenue about 6 years ago, and now we'd like to get into a bigger building, and here we are.
Thank you. There's actually slight changes in the way the business is being proposed to operate. Currently, the business is operating purely as a mortuary. Any of their visitations and such are handled either at churches or other community centers off-site. One of the opportunities that Thibodeau's identified with this property, besides being a little bit more prominent and sort of appropriate for his business, is that it would have the space that it could have limited numbers of visitations. Not all of their I guess they're not clients, but customers.
Family clients.
Family clients have needs for the services, but this does allow that opportunity. So we've been working with Thibodeau's for the last few months, and really have sort of the changes that are being proposed to the exterior of this building really are all code-driven changes. The building, as we talked about, the older house was built back in the beginning of the last century, so it was well before ADA or other codes and ordinances were in place. The addition was done in the 80s, again slightly before ADA was brought into bear, but it's been operated as a business for the last 25 plus, or close to 25 years, and really should have been closer into substantial compliance with ADA long before this point in time. So one of the things that we did is some of the early identification was what are some of the issues with this building. There was a ramp behind the building, but it was far too steep to really count as an ADA accessible ramp, so we identified that early on. There was I'll call it a wooden fire escape that came out of the back of the building, which quite frankly was a fire hazard. It was unsafe, it was chain linked off, it was not in a good situation. And looked at it from a code perspective, did not really feel that it was necessary. We talked to the code enforcement people here in Gaithersburg, and they concurred with us that using the means of egress on the inside was adequate to deal with that. So we tried to come up with some solutions that were sensitive to the historic nature, but then also met code. From my experience working with Montgomery County HPC and working with other historic properties, I understand that ADA has certain, ADA is a very strict set of standards that basically is black and white and has retrofit requirements, unlike most any other building code. But it does have some leniency as it relates to historic properties. If this was not a historic property, they'd say that we needed to provide direct access to the front of the building. They don't like you coming in the back door. Well, we really did not think that was in keeping with the historic nature of the property, and we tried to find a way to make it work to the rear. By taking out the fire escape, it allowed us to a few opportunities. The issues on the front of the building are more minor. There's stairs without handrails. There's a porch that officially by code you could make it work, but if we're expecting small crowds of people, it's really not the safest type of a situation the way it sits there. So in walking through the exhibits that we have, the first plan is looking at the property from East Diamond, looking due north. Sort of a very classic looking facility, and we really expect that over time it's going to become befitting of what a funeral home and a mortuary should be. This is the site plan, again looking from south to north. You can see the property sits at the south end of the property, and you can see there's been some fairly significant takings done for the roads and the truncations. It looks like the truncation actually takes out a corner of the building if you look at it exactly with what's there. So we have very limited site area that's directly a part of this property. A lot of our parking lot is also not really is ours anymore. But the important things to see within the site plan are that on the west side of the property, as Chris mentioned, what we are proposing to do is take one of the rear doors out of the house and turn that into our ADA accessible point into the facility. And we're bringing that down and meeting the ADA standards in terms of slopes and coming out to meeting a parking space. Unfortunately, it requires us to put the handicapped accessible space about halfway down in the lot just to make the grades work the way it needed to. ADA also requires that we have access from a public right-of-way to that access point. So what we're having to do is actually put a fillet of asphalt across the property so that the pedestrian path would go across the parking lot and would have minimal side slopes as it goes across the property. So that is requiring some relatively extensive changes that are happening to the parking lot. I don't think the person in general, we're looking at them, would perceive them as fairly substantial, but they look like a lot on the plan. Behind the house, we are proposing to maintain the porch that is there, but to get rid of the ramp that's too steep, and so we'll just add a set of stairs coming down, which is probably what was there before they retrofit in the ramp. If we go to the next page, this just shows the aerial view of the property. And this starts to show you the different sides of the house. The north elevation of the house is really views only the addition. This was built in the late 1980s. It is officially part of the historic property, but it's really not the historic it's the aspect of the property. The ramp you can see on the left is what we're talking about getting rid of. The south elevation of the house is the historic, what we believe the most important predominant feature of the property. The east side of the house, you can see the split between the older house and the addition to the right to the rear. There's a dashed line that sort of shows where they occurred, where the addition was butted up. The addition appears to have been trying to be somewhat sympathetic. I don't think it does as good a job of distinguishing itself from the historic property as I would have preferred to see it do if I was involved with it, but that's what's there now and what we're dealing with. The west elevation is pretty concealed. You have to sort of get in, and that's why you don't see any good photographs of it. But on the upper left, you can see the fire escape that comes down. You can see the little door on the upper right, which is the door that we're proposing to make the handicapped accessible access into the property. That's also where coffins would be delivered in and out of the property. So that ramp is going to actually give us double purpose. It gives us both the handicapped accessible aspect into the house, but it allows coffins to be wheeled in and out of the property as well. This is a floor plan that identifies almost all of the changes that are being proposed. At the front of the house, We're proposing to add some rails around the front porch, which is the south elevation of the house, coming down the stairs and down the additional 2 flights that go out into the public right-of-way. There's an issue there because it is in the public right-of-way. We have to get Gaithersburg to agree to allow us to do it. But from our perspective, life safety should really govern over any other criteria, and that's why we're proposing very simple wrought iron rail. I will tell you that Jamie, after having walked in here this evening and noticing some of the porches around the building here, noticing how you have some wood rails around the porch and then have some metal rails coming down for them, we're suggesting that maybe for the front porch we actually consider that. I know that's not what's on our plans right now. Right now we're showing infill rails of metal around the porch, and then the down banisters is also in rail. I don't disagree with them. It could be a more appropriate. We keep the wood, and that would make the main porch consistent with what's on the east porch on the side of the property. So it would just be the simplification for the downside. Take that into consideration. There is an existing screen wall that is on the west side of the house, which hides the HVAC units. It's our intention of adding 2 additional units back in that area behind that screen fence. And then to make the ramp work, we're building a platform off of the back door, that west door of the house, and then it picks up the ramp that goes all the way out into the property. As I said, we've got grade working against us because the property does slope from north to south. It probably would have been easier to argue, or technically it would be easier for me to demonstrate how I could get a ramp out from the side door to the north, but we did not want to mess up the front of the house, the south elevation of the house, by bringing a handicapped ramp out and potentially damaging the trees and the landscaping, and also making it something that competed with what's on the house itself. Excuse me. At the back of the house, again, we're proposing to eliminate the existing ramp and put it just a set of stairs and then a pedestrian access. That is our fire egress out of the house from both the second as well as one of the means of egress out of the first floors. The other thing that we're proposing to do is add a sign, or to relocate a monument sign. There's currently a monument sign to the southeast of the property, which is completely within the public right-of-way. We're proposing to create a new sign, a smaller monument that would have masonry surrounds and a sign working within the city ordinances. We recognize we have to get sign approvals on that as well. This just gets into some of the beginning of the detailings of the rails. This gets into an elevation that nobody will ever see so long as the laundry is in front of us. But basically this cuts through as if you're looking at the property, at the face of the property line. So you can see what is proposed here is a wrought iron railing around the south porch and then coming down the stairs. What we're talking about right now is that the rail that you would see there on the side would turn into a wood rail. You can see that where the fire escape comes out of the addition, we're proposing to brick that up to match the existing brick at that point in time. The walk would squeeze down the property line between our property and coming down, and then as the building stepped back, it would pick up a picket rail fence coming down and running down through the property. But the rails in the back we're proposing is basically just a simple wood rail, and we're now saying that we would use something very similar to the detailing shown here at the front of the house as well, if that's acceptable to propose a change on the fly while we're here. And here's the front elevation. As I said, we're proposing it on the drawings as being purely wrought iron, but we're now saying that potentially around the porch it would be a wood rail with just the down rails. And this is the beginnings of the signage concept. So again, the changes that are being proposed to the exterior are really being driven by the code compliance issues. It's not arbitrary. It's nothing that we're doing just because we want to do it. The mortuary business could have run with the ramp that's there and could have worked that way, but it really, to us, did not give us what we wanted to. We wanted to be able to argue that the handicapped or the challenged person could get into the front half of the house. The way the business will operate is we're assuming that most people will come in the front door of the building, come through. The larger viewing room will be at the north end of the building in the addition because there's a bigger space available to us. The interior of the house really is not part of your privy, but in general, we're doing some upgrades to the foundations because there's some undercut foundations that we're trying to make sure the building doesn't deteriorate any in the where there's been some undercut areas work. But in general, the existing floor layout of the older house is staying pretty much as was there to begin with. So turn it over to you for any questions, or if anybody wants to add anything.
Any questions from the panel?
Yeah, I have some questions.
Go to it.
Okay. First, most of this is just clarification for me. If you go to sheet 7 of 8, I just wanted to clarify that the term that you say, original building that's historic and the building addition is a previous addition in all cases. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I just want that for the record. And then on the same drawing, it's a new enlarged door that you're showing. And I know it's on the west side, and you're not going to see much of the west side, which is terrific. But I'm just curious, how are you going to rebuild that arch or extend that arch, or is the enlarged door fit within the current masonry opening?
No, unfortunately, the door back there is too narrow for ADA purposes, and definitely too narrow to bring coffins in and out of. So, because of that, we're having to widen the door. If it was purely widened to ADA's purposes, it would only be 36 inches. I think we're now proposing 40 inches on the door to make sure that we can get coffins in and out of it. But no, unfortunately, we'll have to put a new header. Our intention is to try to match the existing art component of it.
Go to sheet 8 of 8 if you can, please, Chris. I'm finished with my questions. Can I just continue with comments?
Well, I was going to first ask if there was anyone in the audience in favor of this application that would like to speak. Anyone? Hearing none, I'll ask if there's anyone in the audience who wishes to speak against it. Don't hear any of those either. Yes, sir. Comments?
Okay, very good. My biggest comment, I'll just start off with, was the wrought iron railing. When you look at, I think it's sheet, 4 of 8, it shows all the elevations. You can see that the wood railing system is essentially established around the entire building on at least 3 sides. And so changing the vocabulary, particularly in the front of the elevation or the main elevation on the south side, I would strongly recommend against it. So your suggestion, Mr. Thibodeau, of making that match the others is exactly what I was hoping for.
Thank you.
So I think that's a wonderful suggestion, and you've got my full support, of course. Therefore, that takes away my questions or my other issues relating to the wrought iron railing, except for one more item, and that I think is on sheet 5 of 8, if you can, please, Chris. The railing, which now I guess is going to be wood in front elevation, I guess it's on the left-hand side of the drawing, noted in yellow for the new work. The issue that I have, whether it's wrought iron or whether it's wood, of the lower set of stairs right at the concrete sidewalk, I have a concern that it could possibly extend itself into the sidewalk area, which I think would not be a good thing. So I'm not sure how you would address it. Your graphic shows that it does not go into the sidewalk, which of course is a good thing. But that's my big concern. I'm not sure you need a rail there by code. That's up to you guys whether you want one or not. But if you do put a rail there, or rails on each side, I guess my big concern is that it does not go into the sidewalk. The handrail does not extend into the sidewalk at all. So those pretty much are my only comments.
Are you heading in that direction? Phil, do you have anything?
Yeah, I guess my only comments would be, again, on the railing. I fully agree with the wood rail suggestion in the front. And I guess I'm questioning whether doing wood rails and then wrought iron handrails where the steps come down is really much of a benefit as opposed to just doing all white wood rails. I mean, the rails at the side of the house on the I guess that's the east elevation. Right there are you have the vocabulary where you have the white wood handrail from a guardrail standpoint, or a white wood handrail at the actual handrail. So
We're not tall enough that we officially have to be a guardrail. The grade change is not high enough to that. The main reason that we had not started with the wood rail on the stairs We're just, if you look at the south elevation, we were really trying to hope for something to be fairly diminutive and really not stand out. And the wood rails, as you see them on the east elevation, to me, so to just, I think they take away from the character of the historic property a little bit. And so our thought was that, you know, if the wood rail, since from the street, most of the hedges, you're not going to see them that much, or you're not going to see that much of them, they're just going to peek over the top of that, that adding them in around the top on the porch, I think, keeps them fairly small. But if we were to turn them out and come down the sides, it just feels a little bit more intrusive. I mean, I could see that it could end up with, I don't feel that strongly about it, but my preference would be the wrought iron.
Don't you have to trim the hedges anyway because of your proposed signage? The monument sign?
There's some trimming, but our intention is not to completely get rid of them.
I'm not going to argue with you because you're obviously well versed with the project more than I am, but when I'm looking at the plan graphic, it appears that when I compare it to the photo of the foliage outside in front of the building, or certainly in front of the entry, there looks like there's going to be significant. So I'm not saying one way or the other whether that's a big issue as far as the signage working with your vegetation. That's not my concern. You'll get that to work out, obviously. But my point is that I think you'll see the railing. I'm pretty sure you'll see the railing, particularly if you trim the hedges. I do have another point in reference to a question. The photo that's up on the screen now at the top left, the north elevation, I do have a question as to, since, if I'm not mistaken, since the ramp there is coming out, and it's a wood ramp, what is the condition of the exterior building material behind that ramp? Is it brick still, or was it adjusted over the years, or changed in any way when they put up that ramp itself? Like, did they cut away the brick to put headers or lintels or anything? Or can that come out completely?
Existing.
It's brick all the way
masonry
down?
wall down. On the west elevation, the masonry does not come down. It's actually open. There's like a wood trellis on the.
I'm not worried about the west because you really don't see it.
Yep.
It's the east.
I
I'm
can't
sorry,
say
it's
there's
the
not
north.
been some damage done. We haven't, until we tear it down, I can't see.
That's my only question, because I was really wondering, did you guys look behind there to say what's there? I would hate if somebody parged over it and you take that away and it looks like a giant triangle there.
I don't think there's any parging. I don't know how much damage is there.
Okay, just a curious, just a
looked today.
question.
There is raw brick, just like
Wonderful.
the side
Okay.
of the building.
Thank
But
you.
whether it's anchored to the building or not, and might leave holes that need to be.
I don't think that should be that big of a deal if you could fill those holes properly. And may I recommend use the mortar that's brick color in the brick and mortar color where it's drilled into the mortar. That would be great.
Fantastic.
Mary Jo?
I guess overall, I think the application has some very good upgrades to the property. But the two things that I feel strongly are not historically appropriate were the railings, which we've already discussed, which I believe all of them should be wooden. I understand what you're saying about the gauge and how they're not going to be seen anyway, but I think it leads to a continuity of the entire property. And certainly people will see it when they're coming up and into the building, and I just believe that continuity is almost always the best, especially if you're trying to be historically appropriate. And then, this is a question and statement. Have you exhausted all possibilities as far as the doorway you've chosen for the ADA having to expand it, because it is an original door, am I correct in saying that, and not part of the addition?
The door itself has been replaced. It's not,
The
door
doorway.
itself is not, but the doorway, the opening is still the original opening.
Okay. And you've considered all other possibilities as far as where you currently have an ADA compliant door, correct, on the rear of the building?
No, that door really did not actually meet the ADA requirements either,
Okay.
but We actually did start this by trying to see if there was a way that we could work a ramp off of the back porch, because that was our original idea, was maybe widen up the back porch, even though it sort of brought people all the way to the back of the property, which is sort of contrary to what ADA wants. But basically, the ramp, and then with the way the parking lot continued to diminish, we were past the end of the property by the time we got the ramp down to grade.
Okay. All right.
Well, the acting
Thank you.
chair goes last, and I'll say that, Mr. Fuller, my memory is that you're correct that there were stairs there where the existing ramp now sits on the north elevation. I think you've shown a fair amount of ingenuity in your design in making this reuse adaptive and workable, and the changes you're suggesting ultimately could be undone if necessary in the future, but I think it's a very good project as I see it.
I agree.
What's your pleasure, ladies and gentlemen?
Well, I
I-
could make a motion.
All right,
Please
go.
feel free, go ahead.
Well, you may make the motion, but I guess I want to request, can I ask for 2 more conditions besides what the city staff has?
You may ask.
What, you want to discuss them?
Yes, can we discuss that?
Certainly.
I would like one of the conditions to include wooden railings, as we've discussed, and as the applicant has said that they're willing to do.
Can you all hear that?
I'm
I
sorry.
heard
am
the
not-
beginning of it, I didn't hear.
I'm sorry, am I
Wooden
not
railings.
speaking loud enough? One of the conditions would be wooden railings, as the applicant has said that they would be willing to do. And the second one is simply putting on the record what the applicant has said they're willing to do when it comes to widening the door to match the existing brickwork, so that the larger door looks like the entryway the way it had before. It'll just be larger,
Okay.
Can we,
as well as the 2 conditions that the city of Gaithersburg has added for codes
Okay.
compliance.
You still willing to make the motion with these changes?
I'm wondering if we can make that second one a little bit more concise.
Yeah, I don't have the wording for it, but I know what I want. Maybe Frank can help with that.
Perhaps that the condition be that the new enlarged door match the existing to remain doors in material and detailing.
Yes, perfect, thank you.
That'll work.
Has
The
this,
conditions as heretofore described.
yeah, let me run them by you guys first. Provide wood railings
Right.
instead of wrought iron. And the second is,
Or you could say all railings would be wooden.
Yeah.
okay.
Do we want if they do install rails down at the 2 steps adjacent to the sidewalk, do we want those to be wooden as well, or are those wrought iron?
It's a great
think
question.
so.
My first thought is I'm not big on changing vocabulary on a building, but my thoughts are that it's not on the building, it is off the building, it's not attached to it. So I could live with it being wrought iron. My preference is wood. My preference actually is no rail at all. Do you guys believe that a railing there on those 2 steps is required by code, or is it required by safety, or something you guys want to do?
A single rail is really required by code. This is one of our egress points, and an exit stair needs to have at least 1 handrail. For the quantity of people I have, I only need.
I'm talking about the 2-step one, too.
No, I'm talking about the 2-step one. I'm saying that's still part of my exit, because
Okay,
yes, I'm in the public right of way, but it's not the sidewalk. So I really should have a rail.
Okay.
I could get away with 1, but it didn't seem appropriate to have just a single rail out there.
okay,
Felt better to have a pair.
okay. I'm not opposed to one or two, my personal taste, personal opinion, I should say. So what do you guys
I guess
prefer?
my feeling is that a wood rail in the same vocabulary as the porch rail, when you have a little two-step wooden rail, is going to look sort of odd and blocky and detached, just sort of sitting out there in the middle of the sidewalk by itself. That in that location, my feeling is a sort of black painted middle-less wrought iron railing. In addition to it being easier to get the strength that you need when it just sort of stands up there on its own, it'll also sort of disappear more and it's set away from the building.
More invisible.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
All right, so.
With the exception of the two-step.
Yeah.
Okay.
On the north elevation.
Okay.
Are we still allowed to comment, or are you in a deliberation?
Oh, by all means, go ahead.
I simply wanted to ask, when you mentioned wood railing, with durability concerns, I took a close look at your front porch here, and what appears to be wood railing, very much like this building, it in touching it, it feels like PVC or plastic that's much more durable than actual wood, even pressure treated. So if the actual material could be variable but look like the rest of the building that is wood, and as we maintain the building, perhaps using some recycled materials or PVC type materials to add to the longevity.
You found a hot button, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We've had some very energetic discussions recently over that very topic, but I'll defer to my colleagues as to that discussion.
Yeah, I'm in the same camp as you. I think it needs to be wood.
Yes.
On this
Wood? Sure,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It should match the other detail on your, that's already on your building.
Very good.
Which are basically plastic rails.
They're all plastic? The one on
Not
the,
our building.
Here they are. These,
They are?
the side is, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, basically, from what we'd heard previously, we were proposing on the back rails that we're not working with real wood, we're working with Trex as basically for the ramp and for the rails to the rear. But you tell us.
I guess what I would say about that is that in the case that you were to come before us and want to replace the rails that are not wood, it would be likely this board may encourage you to replace with wood.
Okay.
So they are there now, but they maybe someday,
Okay.
they may not be.
I guess I'm a little less cut and dried on the subject. You know, in theory, I don't have a problem with the composite or the plastic replacement rails, but the devil's in the details, and it's the devil's in the product and what it looks like. And my sense from the past issues we've had with this is it's as much to do with the unreliability of what we get as it is with the concept of composite versus real. That said, if we're actually talking about a Trex railing system, I've seen them before. I mean, they're pretty, as replacement railings go, they're pretty high end. So I guess if we're talking about a product like that, I don't have a problem with it. But just my hang-up is that based on what's submitted in this proposal, there's not a product to reference or a product to approve or a sample to look at.
Well, on our page 7, we basically do have some details of how that railing system is set up, and it's basically we're trying to match the railing that's currently at the rear of the building. So it does have it's not, I would say, super ornate, but then again, the way the building is set up is it's not overly ornate, but it does have some detailing to it. It's not set up with just rectilinear members.
The quality and durability is what my concern would be, to either meet or exceed what wood would give us.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is that the drawings, what's on the screen now, sheet 7 of 8, calls out all the railings as painted wood.
That's right.
Painted wood posts, painted wood pickets,
Okay.
existing painted wood.
I also believe that we had, on more than one occasion, required wood rails in other historic
Yeah.
conditions, and what the reasons we came to, or the conclusions that we had then, I think apply here. But then I also believe, even though each building's supposed to be on its own merit, evaluate on its own merit, I tend to think that how could we change our thoughts for, prior buildings when we felt strong about it, when this condition is similar. It's front elevation on a historic building, and I remember very recently we were even concerned about wood windows being
Right.
Yeah.
replaced with wood. So I would think a railing would be more important than a wood window on a second story, because you could touch and feel a wood railing down on the pedestrian level much easier. Anyway, that's my thought about it.
So we are in agreement
Yeah,
that we
I
can
certainly
keep that as a condition.
I have no
as well.
problem with
Okay.
the wood railing.
Great.
All right, so we have, let me just read these conditions, see if these sound correct to you guys. For the first condition, all railings to be wood to match the design of the existing, except near the sidewalk, which can be either wood or wrought iron.
Wrought iron.
Is that acceptable, Chairman?
Yes.
Okay. All right, and then the second is the widened door on the, is it west elevation? I believe so.
Yeah, north,
the west
south, east,
elevation.
west, yeah.
Right, on the west elevation. To match the existing doors, masonry arch, and door material in color and in detailing. Does that sound acceptable? Okay.
Fine with that.
All right, and then there are two others that the city recommends. Do we consider that number 3 and 4?
Fine.
Or do we want to have those be 1 and 2 and then mine be 3 and 4? Which do you prefer?
I think yours would be 3 and 4.
Okay, that sounds fine by me. All righty. Okay, do I need to repeat them, or you have that?
I believe we have it on the record.
Wonderful.
And I
Okay.
second.
You second?
I'm
Mike?
second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Let's put it to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
No one opposed. It's 4-0. Carries.
Excellent.
You're in business.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Wessel, thank you for coming in.
I apologize again for making you guys
Hopefully
sit here and wait while I got my act
Not
together.
at all.
Hopefully your twins weren't too uncooperative.
Thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
Let's see if there's anything else.
Okay.
And Brother Berger, do we have anything else to discuss?
We
this
do
evening?
have another staff update. Yes. Have a good night.
All right.
Assistant City Attorney Johnson just reminded me of a program that the city is pursuing, a grant program for facades in Old Town Gaithersburg. And we were asked by the head of the program if the HDC would be willing to give a courtesy review for these applications to do facade improvements.
Yes.
And I thought it would certainly be something that you would be interested in.
Sure.
So-
Only extremely.
We thought that might be the case, but, and it might be a couple of months before anything comes forward, if not
Right.
longer than that. But even in beginning the concept, wanted to make sure to bring that to your attention, so.
And it would be great to have a lot of materials to look at. I guess those are the kind of things that, photos of before and afters, and a lot of different befores, because I believe there's been a bunch of different facades in Old Town. So it would be great to have as much material as we could to look at.
Yeah, I agree, and as Brother Wessel said, the devil is in the details, so we'd like
Yes.
to see exactly what it is that's being proposed.
Mm-hmm.
The only other thing I would have to offer is thank you for making this unusual December meeting, and I wish you all happy holidays.
And making
Welcome,
this
same to
meeting
you.
unusual, right?
Yes, there you go.
One last question. With regard to the January Annapolis event,
Mhm.
is that something that would also be useful as far as training, or is that
Just for fun.
I would think it would.
I'll check with the Maryland Historical Trust to see if that's something that would be considered. That's a good question.
Well, the nature of the beast is that water rising could harm historic buildings.
Right.
So, as far as I'm concerned, it does.
Yeah, I'll get back to you on that. I will certainly check and see if that satisfies the annual course requirement.
It's an extreme form of a wet basement.
It's true.
And I would be interested in going, although I would want a carpool with somebody, so just
That would
putting that
certainly
out
make
there.
sense.
Yeah.
Okay, we can arrange something like that when the time gets closer. It's January 30th, I believe it's a Saturday.
30th. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Sounds really good.
Yeah, you could listen to my Tiny Tim collection all the way to Minneapolis.
It will work for me. I like it.
Wouldn't work for me. If we have nothing further, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? None? Before we go, I do want to thank once again the members of the staff for coming out this evening and helping us keep this trolley from going off its rails. I know you have families and other things to do at this time of year, so thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you all
Thank you.
for being here as well.
Yes.
All four of you.